everybody, I'm KC, and welcome to our edition of Let's Talk About, and welcome to the latest installment of To Infinity War and Beyond. Spider-Man, now he's hanging with Iron Man in Civil War and much more. Now let's see what's in store for the MCU. Now it's Spider-Man Homecoming. If you weren't completely convinced that I am a huge dork, there's your final piece of evidence. After getting a taste for fighting bigger battles in Civil War, Peter Parker, played by Tom Holland, is ready to move beyond being a friendly neighborhood Spider-Man and become a full-fledged Avenger. But he might find a bigger threat than he bargained for right in his own backyard. Okay, this is a big one. While Marvel has had hit after hit in the cinematic universe, there are some movies that are more important than others. Iron Man started the studio's success, the Avengers show what their approach to a franchise could accomplish and would shape what the cinematic universe became, and then there was a time when Sony realized that their latest iteration of the webhead wasn't going great, and then turned to Marvel Studios and went, "Hey guys, want to make the internet explode?" And really, for a hero and story that no one ever thought or planned to be a part of the cinematic universe, it fits so naturally into it. Peter and his classmates are some of our first glimpses in the movies of how everyday life is affected by having the Avengers in it. The first thing we see in the movie is a drawing a kid did of the Battle of New York. The rest of the kids talk about them like they're celebrities, and Cap recorded a bunch of PSA videos they show in the school, which is just the best thing ever.
Thank you, Captain. Pretty sure this guy's a war criminal now, but whatever. I have to show these videos. It's required by the state. Let's do it.
And a big part of this movie is showing the events and changes in the MCU from a different perspective. How it affects people's everyday lives directly or indirectly, which is a detail a lot of people forget but is essential to building a universe like this. You can't have world-shattering events every other movie and not have it leave an impact on the world in some form for the last 8 years. It's been 8 years since the Avengers formed? That does not sound right, but okay. Maybe they changed it so that kid in Iron Man 2 really could be Peter Parker. But let's put a pin in that point. For now, let's take a look at our latest webhead. And even though I've only seen parts of the Tobey Maguire Spider-Man, Tom Holland is my favorite Spider-Man. I did like Andrew Garfield's portrayal, but everything about Holland just screams teenage superhero. The thing I can praise the most about Peter is that he is a very believable 15-year-old superhero. The first time we see him in the movie is when he's recording a vlog of the events of Civil War. It's hilarious and exactly what a teenager in 2017 would do if they got to go on a trip with a bunch of superheroes. He's a clever kid, but he's also an awkward, sweaty mess who's still getting used to having superpowers and trying to prove that he can move on to bigger things as a superhero. Which makes sense. After being asked by Iron Man to help stop a group of heroes turned criminals, of course stopping bike thieves and carjackings is going to feel pretty insignificant. And if there is one thing every high school age teen wants but never gets, it's respect. And while Peter is certainly skilled, he's striving for too much too quickly, and starts to get reckless because of that. Holland is also physically perfect for the role, and I'm not talking about the looks, but his background in gymnastics and dance really helps bring Peter's superpowers to life. How his powers transform his physical language, and how Holland makes it look so natural for Peter. Like, can we just talk about the costume real quick? No, not that one, even though it does look great. This one. I freaking adore this handmade mess of a suit. I know they've had explanations for why Spidey's costume looks the way it does, but really, what kid would know how to make a clean, elaborate costume like this? If a 15-year-old financially struggling kid wants to make a superhero suit, this is the kind of cheap, ridiculous look you're going to get. And I know this because when I was 15, I tried to make a Lion King-inspired Halloween costume, and it looks like this. I do love every detail of the main Spider-Man suit, but this thing will always have a special place in my heart. While there aren't many standouts in terms of character development, Homecoming has a memorable and eclectic supporting cast. There's Peter's best friend Ned, played by Jacob Batalon, who I originally wasn't a huge fan of since it seemed like he jumped way too quickly into exploiting Peter's secret identity to become popular. I'm sure that makes sense for a 15-year-old nerd, but that doesn't mean I have to like it. But he did grow on me as he slowly realized that his best friend could get seriously hurt if they keep messing around, and genuinely has his back when he's needed. Even trying to be a voice of reason at some points. parts. And I do kind of like that Peter has someone who knows about his life as Spider-Man and can help him out. And they are surrounded by students who are always affected by what's going on in the movie. But the best, hands down, is Zendaya as Michelle, or MJ. And even though he doesn't have a major part in this movie, I have to give a special shout out to Donald Glover's part, who is not only a huge Spider-Man fan, but actually played Miles Morales in the Ultimate Spider-Man animated show. And I'm like one of the 12 people who kind of liked Ultimate Spider-Man, so this was great casting. Happy's back again, and having one of his main jobs be checking up on Peter is pretty funny. And the main man, Tony Stark, is back, now as a mentor figure. And I can't lie and say I'm not a little bit proud of how he handled things with Peter. I mean, think about it. A couple years ago, he would have given Peter a suit with all the bells and whistles, no questions asked, and sent him off who knows where. But this is one of those roles where having a history in the MCU adds a lot of perspective. We know that when you mess up bad enough to make Tony Stark look like a responsible adult, you done goofed. But he knows how to deal with Peter because he's been where Peter is now.
Let's have it.
You don't understand. The thing is, this is all I have. I'm nothing without this suit.
If you're nothing without this suit, then you shouldn't have it, okay?
Thinking that being a hero is all that matters, but the key to being a hero is realizing that that's not the case. He does pop in occasionally to help Peter and even scold him, but for the most part, he lets Peter figure these things out on his own. Even though I think there are times where he could have communicated things better, telling Peter he followed up on his lead probably would have been a good idea, but this is still Tony, and I consider only one screw-up progress. I really love the relationship between these two, and I can't wait to see more of it. And I think we can all agree one of the best parts of the movie was our villain, Adrian Toomes, aka the Vulture, played by Michael Keaton.
You either die a hero, or you live long enough to see yourself become the villain.
I know that's not from Michael Keaton's Batman, but I couldn't resist. Now, let's take that pin out from earlier, because Vulture is basically a blue-collar villain, which for a movie like this was a good call. Vulture's plans involve salvaging tech from the Avengers' battles and modifying and selling it to the highest bidder. Now, this wasn't the first time civilians had gotten their hands on this debris, but now we have the introduction of damage control and what the heroes leave behind, and how people who feel left in the lurch try to take advantage of their situation. It's a great concept and shows just how well different aspects of this universe are thought through. You never hear about the people who have to clean up the superheroes' messes, and now there's an entire subplot dedicated to it. And the Vulture's design looks amazing. The aesthetic, the effects, those intimidating glowing eyes that I thought were gonna look silly, the idea that it was built out of alien tech, everything about it is just so cool. Thank God they didn't stick to the original design. Michael Keaton could have ended up looking like this, and that just would have been silly for a movie. That would be enough to make this guy stand out, but then there's the twist of him being the father of the girl Peter's had a crush on. And I have never felt a more unanimous sense of fear in a theater than when Michael Keaton opened that door for the first time. It was a perfect reveal. And big shock, Michael Keaton is fabulous in this role. And his scariest moment isn't even in the suit or in a battle, but that car ride to Homecoming as he puts the pieces together about Peter. I swear, everyone in that audience was genuinely fearing for Peter's life. I also want to mention the action scenes because while they may not be the most ambitious in the MCU, they are definitely creative, especially in their varied locations, which makes each action scene feel fresh. From realistic Brooklyn to the suburbs to the Staten Island Ferry to the Washington Monument to the final battle on an invisible plane, it's just nice to get Spidey out of the Manhattan area for once. Even though I don't think the web slinging looks as cool as it did in something like Amazing Spider-Man, I respect that the filmmakers wanted to go for a more grounded approach, and it's still creative and really fun to watch. However, there is a critique that has come up with this movie that I can't really brush aside. It was something I didn't realize when I saw the movie, but reflecting on it, it's a good point. That this movie explores an area of Peter being Spider-Man that is interesting, but doesn't really go into why he does this in the first place. We get a glimpse of Peter's motives in that great scene in Civil War.
Look, when you can do the things that I can, but you don't, and then the bad things happen, They happen because of you.
But that's about it. In a movie that's reintroducing Spidey to a mainstream audience, this is a problem. They never even mention Uncle Ben by name or that he or Aunt May have lost a family member. The closest thing we get is how Peter says she's been through a lot lately, and that's only once or twice. Even if this is a problem, it is glaringly obvious why they went this route. Spider-Man is in a very unique position in the MCU. Unlike virtually every other hero introduced so far, who have either had laughably terrible film portrayals or have never been brought to the big screen at all, this would be the 6th Spider-Man film and 3rd reboot in the span of 15 years. For any character, that's insane. Every creative decision that horrorcore fans probably had a problem with in this movie can be traced back to this fact. Every interview I've seen from the creative team states over and over again how much they want to do something different and not show the same story beats again. And yeah, we'd probably all be rolling our eyes if we had to see Uncle Ben get shot again, but it's like Bruce Wayne's parents. It can be tedious watching it when we already know that about Batman, but it's still essential to his story. And just like the other MCU films, this should be treated as if it could be someone's first exposure to Spider-Man, even though it probably isn't. And if they don't want to address that right now, this still could have been really easy to fix. Have a photo for Peter or May to look at, or have Peter staring at a father and kid while he's out on duty. Something to let us know that there is something looming over Peter. He clearly puts a lot of his own self-worth and identity into being Spider-Man, and he hasn't been doing it that long, so why not explore that deeper? But I'm still hoping that this will be addressed in future installments of the MCU. Like how in Iron Man, Tony's father was just a name tossed around, and then later they go more into how that relationship affected him. And considering that the sequel was announced 6 months before the film even came out, and Spidey is getting a featured role in this other little Marvel movie coming out soon, I do have confidence that the MCU will flesh out this Spider-Man story in the hopefully bright future they have in store for him. Overall, while Spider-Man Homecoming may not be the best Spider-Man movie, of the ones I've seen, it's definitely my favorite. It's not perfect, and I won't decry anyone who thinks this isn't the greatest Spider-Man movie ever made, but to finally have Spidey back home and having fun, especially after the bitter feelings I had towards Amazing Spider-Man 2, for something we all wanted, but never thought was going to happen, this was a great sign of what's to come for Spider-Man in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys next time.
Oh my